We're here at the Steelworkers Presidential Forum on Renewing American Manufacturing with Senator Joe Biden, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee from Delaware, who's seeking the Democratic nomination for the presidency. Senator, as you know, we've lost over 3 million American manufacturing jobs over the last several years. As president, what would you do to stop the bleeding, to stem the flood tide of exported jobs in this country?
First thing, I wouldn't provide for any trade agreements that didn't include labor protection and environmental protection, because that gets us in a race to the bottom. If you're able not to have environmental protections or labor treatment of fair labor treatment in another country, you can just drive wages down to the bottom, and we lose our advantage. Number one. Number two, I would invest in a national health care policy, because right now American manufacturers are at a significant disadvantage. You build a Buick Skylark in my town of Wilmington, Delaware at the GM plant, and you build the same Skylark up in Ontario, Canada, you can sell the one up there for 14% less because they have a national health care system. It's not all rests on the company. Third thing I would do is I would invest a great deal more in technology and infrastructure. If we were just to invest the same percentage of our GDP as India, Japan, it's 8% and 10% respectively, do in renewing their infrastructure, bridges, highways, tunnels, ports. Imagine how many American jobs we would generate here, and imagine how many American businesses would stay and how many new businesses would come, because we had the best productivity capacity of any country in the world. And the third thing I would do is you have to invest in new technologies. The idea that we are not only energy dependent, but the idea that we're not moving toward independence, but more importantly, developing technologies for export. Imagine if we developed clean coal technology. We could sell that technology to China that's building one new coal-fired electric plant per month, ruining the ozone layer, causing us great damage because they're burning dirty coal. So I look at the education side of this, of generating, looking around the horizon. What are the new products that the world is going to need that we have the technological capacity to generate? And all of those things, I think, would reverse the trend of loss of manufacturing jobs.
You alluded to our broken healthcare system. That's having a tremendous negative impact, not only on the 47 million people who don't have health care, but on our contract negotiations throughout the union.
Absolutely.
And especially on our retirees. What specifically would you seek to do to fix this broken system?
Well, first of all, this is the first time ever that we have business wanting health care as much as labor wants it, which is an interesting thing. What I'm about to say, I probably couldn't have gotten done 15 years ago as president, but I can get done now as president. It's in their naked self-interest. The polemic argument about health care right or health care privilege, that's over. So the first thing I would do is I have a whole comprehensive health care plan, just as the other candidates do. But no one can tell us what that health care plan is. If you can't explain to the average American in simple terms what your health care plan is, then what happens? The special interest groups dominate. And so you need a president strong enough to take on the special interests who are going to assault any change in the trough that they are drinking at here. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you got to do is you got to build a consensus. Within 1 year, the first year as president, I would insure every single child in America. You could do that for $29 billion a year. We're spending that much money we're spending $85 billion a year in a tax cut for people making an average income of $1,400,000 a year, just to put it in perspective. Secondly, I would provide catastrophic health insurance. Those two items alone would take an incredible burden off the businesses you're negotiating with, reduce their cost overall, and make it much more easy to continue to negotiate their participation in your full coverage of the adults left on that policy. The third thing I would do, I would invest the money. You have to invest money. Invest money in the new technologies to be able to make all records, medical records, available electronically, which would drive down the cost of delivering health care by 14–15%. The third thing I would do, I would give the states, who are all trying to provide for total coverage in their states, and they're experimenting with it. I'd give them much more flexibility. I'd underwrite their willingness to do that, whether it's Massachusetts, California, Pennsylvania, Florida, they're all doing it. And I would build a consensus. Once you get 35 or 40 states that have a program, some better than others, that provide for total health care insurance, just like you have automobile liability insurance, then you have built a national consensus that the special interest can't break. Now I go out and I can cherry pick which of those ideas are the best to put it into a national plan. Because, folks, if plans were the answer to health care, we'd have settled the problem a long time ago. And the most important thing we could do, we're not going to be able to do.
Well, you also mentioned renewable energy. There is a tremendous potential for renewable energy sources to create jobs, to liberate us from Mideast oil dependency. What sort of public investments are you prepared to make to speed the advance of renewables?
Immediately, I would invest $50 billion in new technologies, an investment a year in providing for joint ventures as well as incentives to move people and companies to providing alternatives. Secondly, as President of the United States, I would literally announce as an executive order the day after I was sworn in that every single solitary automobile purchased by a fleet purchase of the federal government would have to get 40 miles to the gallon. Every single solitary new building built would have to be green technologies. And you say, well, Joe, what would that do? Well, guess what? Within about a month after my doing that, you'd have 35 states doing the same thing. And what have you done? You've now created a pool of about $400 to $500 billion. What's that do? That's the old free enterprise system. That attracts an awful lot of people, an awful lot of people. That's a way to jumpstart and change the mindset of America. One of the things the past presidents have not, recent past presidents have not understood is that one of the most powerful tools that a president has is that bully pulpit. When the president would set out that message, it would change the dynamic. And think how many jobs that's creating. We're now building these turbines, these wind turbines in other countries and importing them. Why is that? Why do we need to do that? The idea of what is available for solar power as we invested. I'll give you one little example. I have a little bill. I'm not going to sound like a senator, a policy wonk here. I apologize. I have a little bill that we haven't passed yet that would provide $100 million a year investment in finding new technology for lithium-ion batteries. The Japanese are investing in it. You know what that means? If you get a lithium-ion battery that works, you can have a car that you plug in your garage that gets 100 miles to the gallon equivalent, and that will radically reduce the requirement to be able to have to go out and purchase gasoline and import oil. What does that do? How many jobs does that create in Detroit and Wilmington, Delaware, and the Chrysler plant down at Newark, Delaware? So there's a lot of things we can do, but it takes presidential leadership.
Well, Senator, thank you very much for being at the forum with us today and for being a part of this interview.
Well, thank you. Thanks an awful lot.